Picture this. It's 1957, and there's a totally standard commercial cargo ship sailing through the Mediterranean. On paper, it's just a routine shipment of vegetables heading over to Morocco. But beneath that completely mundane exterior, tucked away deep in the ship's hold, lay the weight of an entire revolution. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unraveling one of the most fascinating logistical and espionage mysteries of the 20th century. We're going to dig into the story of the 1 Elix, a Spanish cargo ship that basically became the centerpiece of a massive, super-secret covert operation.
So let's jump right into part 1, the fake onion shipment.
Okay, look at the stark contrast here. On the left side, we have the official story, onions and water pumps leaving the port of Alexandria. I mean, it looks like entirely harmless agricultural commerce, right? But on the right, you see the reality of the situation. It was actually a massive stockpile of weapons and ammunition destined for the Algerian National Liberation Army, or the FLN. The Egyptian government essentially used these agricultural goods as a modern-day Trojan horse. They knew a shipment of vegetables wouldn't really raise any alarms, which made it the absolute perfect physical cover to move military hardware across highly monitored international waters. Now, to really understand why anyone would authorize such an incredibly risky operation in the first place, we have to set our historical baseline. On November 1st, 1954, the Algerian armed struggle against French occupation officially kicked off. And during this era, Egypt was providing some really substantial political and military backing to the Algerian forces. The geopolitical stakes at this time were just incredibly high. Both sides of the conflict were heavily invested, and the demand for weapons was reaching this absolute critical peak. So, this intensely pressured environment, that's exactly what necessitated such extreme covert logistics. Which brings us to Section 2, a secret European mission. It is absolutely fascinating to see how these high-level officials managed to move undetected across borders. Look at these aliases on the screen. Up top, we have Fathi El-Deeb, who is the Egyptian official in charge of Arab affairs at the presidency. He traveled under the fake name Mohammed Ibrahim Hassan. And below him is Dr. Idris. He was a surgeon based in Marrakesh, but secretly, he was the Algerian arms buyer operating under the alias Wazani Hamed. By utilizing diplomatic pouches and these forged identities, these guys were able to slip right through European customs and border checks. They looked like nothing more than ordinary travelers while they were out there brokering massive international arms deals. Moving on to Section 3, the arms dealer's crisis. You see, this covert European tour, it wasn't some carefully planned shopping spree. It was literally a rescue mission. Things had gotten dire. A deal had originally been struck with 2 international arms dealers, a Frenchman named Frey and a Dane named Eriksson. The goal was to buy World War II surplus mortars, machine guns, and rifles coming out of West Germany. But then, these rogue dealers started throwing up all these sudden obstacles. They were stalling the transfer and creating a massive crisis that threatened not just the weapons themselves, but the huge amount of money tied up in the deal. And we really need to talk about the sheer scale of the risk here. $1 million. To put that into perspective, in 1957, that was an absolute fortune, and it had already been deposited into a Swiss bank account. The situation was so incredibly precarious that Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser had to personally intervene. He gave Fathi El-Deeb strict non-negotiable orders. Either get that $1 million back from the Swiss bank or make sure those weapons are secured and delivered at all costs. Failure was simply not an option. So El-Deeb is on the clock, right? This creates an incredibly tense timeline for his frantic tour across Europe. He heads out on January 15th, 1957. Just days later, he's in Germany, directly dealing with the treacherous landscape laid out by those rogue dealers. Over the following weeks, he's moving through Sweden and Austria, completely off the grid. The sources actually reveal that during this time, El-Deeb faced some extreme pressure. Actually, scratch that, it wasn't just pressure, it was actual death threats, plus attempts to compromise him with alcohol and women. But he evades all these traps. He eventually makes a brilliant strategic pivot, landing in Prague, Czechoslovakia, to just bypass the black market entirely and negotiate a direct deal with the government. And in Prague, they secure a massive breakthrough. Out of sheer appreciation for the Egyptian government, Czechoslovakian officials gave them a 30% discount on all the contracted ammunition. And here's a crazy historical detail for you. El-Deeb actually got out there and personally tested the weapons on the firing ranges himself. Furthermore, to protect the whole operation's secrecy, the Czech government agreed to scrub every single source marking and serial number from the arms before shipping them off to a Polish port. Section 4. Building the export front. All right, so by May 3rd, 1957, these unmarked weapons safely arrived in Alexandria, Egypt. But getting them there, that was only half the battle. Now, they had to build an airtight legal front to get these weapons all the way to the front lines. This really illustrates the strict, crazy bureaucracy required for covert ops. It wasn't just sneaking boxes onto a boat at midnight. Step 1. They set up the Eastern Navigation and Trade Company with 20,000 Egyptian pounds, strictly as a front company. Step 2. The Egyptian Minister of Economy himself stepped in to facilitate official, but entirely fake, export permits for water pumps and onions. Step 3. Those unmarked weapons were painstakingly hidden right underneath the agricultural cargo. And finally, Step 4. They chartered the Spanish commercial vessel, the Juan Elux, to transport the whole shebang to a trusted shell company in Morocco. And that leads us to Section 5, the sudden voyage end. Okay, so everything is perfectly in place. On the morning of June 3rd, 1957, under the personal supervision of Fatih El-Deeb, the ship sets sail from Alexandria. They even sent a highly classified, coded message to the Egyptian military attaché in Madrid, giving him the exact, precise layout of exactly which onion crates contained the hidden weapons. But, history rarely goes exactly according to plan. 10 days later, on June 13th, the operation hit a sudden, massive plot twist. The moment the Guanaloops arrived at its destination, Spanish authorities abruptly intercepted it. They completely seized the ship and all its cargo. Just like that, this perfectly constructed facade was shattered in an instant. As you can imagine, the historical fallout was immediate. The entire covert operation, which had literally been months in the making, was suddenly exposed to the whole world. Internal suspicions immediately flared up. Algerian officials suspected that a leak had originated from within Moroccan parties, who they thought tipped off the Spanish authorities. However, even though the mission failed to actually deliver the arms, the seizure accidentally illuminated something incredible for historians. It revealed the truly massive scale, the sophistication, and the serious funding of intelligence and logistical proxy networks that were operating in the shadows back in the 1950s. It really leaves us looking at the extreme fragility of covert geopolitics. Think about it. You can have the forged passports, the millions of dollars, the shell companies, and the totally untraceable weapons. But all of it, the entire house of cards, hinges on absolute silence. So how can a single leaked secret completely unravel months of complex international espionage? It's a pretty wild reminder of just how delicate the scales of history truly are.